Welcome everyone to this demo day, IoT demo day. So today, Tim and me are going to demonstrate Eclipse Vorto to you on a specific kind of use cases. What we want to illustrate, a full end-to-end integration based on the current productive and released version. In case you have any questions or so, I would recommend that you have them at the end of the session, so of our demo. So and then yeah, we're happy to answer your questions. Good. I hope everyone can see the screen. So let me just start before we go into the demo a little bit on a recap on what is Vorto and what it is actually trying to address here. So assuming that there is not the de facto standard in the IoT, as you can imagine, being different kind of protocols, different kind of payload descriptions, device-specific payload descriptions, either proprietary or standard-based. And from the solution perspective, that really gets a nightmare or a headache to integrate all these kind of different devices, especially if you want to have a solution which is device type agnostic, to basically have a more market share and sell your solution to more customers. So the problem actually is that you have these different device payloads and integrating that to create these solutions. So here in this example, for a connected building solution, different cameras, Bosch ones or different kind of from vendors having different payloads. Yeah, so this, if you have these kind of different types, you basically imagine that these, from the solution perspective, will end up in having different kind of device-specific payloads and APIs that the solution needs to handle. So at more integrating cameras or more cameras are being integrated, the more device payloads the solution needs to be end up handling. So that gets a little bit frustrating and also very time consuming and at the end also costly. So Vorto, what is trying to address here is to enable IoT platforms to expose a normalized device API for different kind of device payloads that basically integrates, or it basically allows the integration of these different cameras or different devices in a much easier fashion. So we provide tooling, SDKs in order to do so. And yeah, without further ado, that's a little bit of what we're doing. And in order to get it more in a tangible way, we would like to demo that to you today. And that becomes, yeah, so more practical. So I will hand over to Tim, who will be walking you through this demo. And at the end of this demo, or at the end of the session, we will also circulate all the links, everything that you need to know, that you need to have in order to try out this on your own, offline, maybe later or sometime later. Okay, awesome. So let's start.
All right. Hi everyone. I'm going to take over now. So let me walk you through what we're going to do in this session for a moment. If you can see the picture here, the Vorto in action, the demo in general, we will go through the whole pipeline and create a Vorto model, information model on the Vorto repository based on, in our case, a Raspberry Pi. And we will use the CPU temperature sensor that is on board on the Raspberry Pi by default to read out some data later on in the integration part. We will send the data from the device, from our Raspberry Pi, via MQTT to the Bosch IoT Suite using the asset communication package. And we will then use this data and our node.js and React.js dashboard we created to display this data that is coming in from the device itself in a nice manner and just make it visually appealing. And of course, those cards you can already see here, we will see them later on again. All of them comply to the Vorto specific function blocks again, so that we can get this advantage of what Alex just talked about, having this unified, this abstract system. So let me just jump to the prerequisites here. If you want to try this out later on, we have all of the steps documented in the Vorto repository on GitHub. So we have tutorials for every step-by-step tutorials, so you can really do it yourself. Some of the things you need to have is a GitHub account to log into the Vorto repository, Bosch IoT Suite account, which is needed to subscribe to the asset communication package. Of course, in most cases you want to have a Raspberry Pi, so you can try out the integration. You can also do it on your like machine itself without reading actual data, but sending some mock data just to try it out. Postman is used to do the device provisioning, and for app development, which will be the dashboard, we need node.js or more likely npm to run it. If you want to extend this dashboard later on, you gotta have some IDE or some code editor as VS Code on your system, so you can easily manipulate the code and adjust it to your needs. But we will look into that later on as well. If we now jump forward to the first step, which is creating an information model, there are basically two ways you can do that. You can use the Vorto web editor, which is integrated into the Vorto repository we will use in this case, and you'll see that in a minute. The other option is using the Eclipse plugin to do that. So you can actually write information models, function blocks, and data types in all of the Vorto blocks inside of your Eclipse IDE as well. But in this case, as I said, we will use the Vorto web editor. Let me close this presentation or minimize it and jump into my web browser here. If we go to the Vorto repository, we can see this Vorto repository as it is in general. And I'm already logged in here. You can see it on the upper right top with my GitHub account, basically, as I said before. And now I can start by describing a device. Okay, you can see this window opening, and on the left-hand side, we have the basic versions or the basic information things we can create: information model, function block, data type, and mapping. In this case, as I said, we will create this information model for our Raspberry Pi device. Here you can just define some namespace. I will use com.bosch.let's do Vorto tutorial. I will give it a name as Raspberry Pi tutorial, for example, or let's call it just tut for a little, so it's a little bit shorter. And version 1.0 is fine for now because we're just creating a new one, right? In this second screen we see here, we can actually define the properties this device has. So if we look back at what we saw before, we will use temperature, we will have battery, and the location as a geolocation in here. So we can conveniently use this drop-down, which will use the Vorto compliant or the function blocks defined by the Vorto team. And we can now select what we want here. So for example, the battery function block, we can add it here. Second one, as I said, is location, so we will also add that. And the third one we talked about was temperature. And in this case, I want to also edit the name that will be displayed later on. So in this case, I will do CPU temperature because we want to make sure that we know that it's the temperature of the CPU and not the surrounding or anything like that. After adding all of them, I can just click the create button. And once that is done, we will see this new page of the Vorto repository with our specific device. We will see some information about the ID, the namespace, everything we need to know, who created it. And if we scroll down to the model editor, we can now see our definition of this specific information model using the functions blocks we just defined. Of course, we can also go in, and if we go up a little bit again, we can see there is no image yet, so we can also just like upload some image of a Raspberry Pi. And once it's uploaded, it will reload the page. And basically, we're ready to go in. One thing you should note here is that the state of this information model is draft, so it's not visible to the whole public. For now, it's only visible for you or your tenant later on. And what we can do now is we can use this device to do an integration. But before I do this, or the device provisioning and the integration. But before I do this, let's go back to the Explore page, just to make sure you can see that I can view all of those. Searching, there we go. devices in a draft state, for example, and then I can see all my draft models that are specific for the logged in user for now. Okay, so we did this first step, is creating an information model. We now have our information model in place, and what we can do now is write the device code for the Raspberry Pi. And in this step, we want to just do the integration. So we will go in, download, or use the Python generator that is highlighted with red here. And using the Python generator, we will generate a code stub that will help us integrate or read out integrate the device itself. This will give us some basic capabilities, like already providing us with the code part that will take care of the MQTT delivery to hubs later on, and things like that. But we will look into the code now. So the steps to do that is to, again, go to the web page, to the Vorto page of your specific device, click on the Bosch IoT Suite Generator, and then this window will pop up, and then we do integrate. So let me just show it to you in the repository. So we will just use our Raspberry Pi tutorial element here. And if you look on the right side, it's now getting the generators. And if we wait just a few seconds, we can then see the Bosch IoT Suite plugin. We can click here, and now you recognize this window, right? So here on the right, we have this integrates device with Python. If we download that now, let's see, we can get this pop-up, save file. Let me jump into my downloads folder. And here we now can see this Raspberry Pi zip. So let me just, for organizing everything, I will create a folder, and I will do a tutorial. I will put this in here. Go into the folder, extract it to specific folder, and then I will just go in here, and now I will show you what's actually inside of this code. So we will just quickly go over this and what parts are important to us, just to give you a basic understanding of what's going on in here. So if let me just make this a little bit bigger. There we go. Okay, let me close this one. So the most important parts of this whole file is this configuration on the top part, and this might get clearer once we provision our device, because we will get all of those information once we created the thing for our specific device as a response, and we can then use the information we got in there, such as the device ID, the auth ID, and the tenant ID is clear from the asset communication package. I will show this to you again in a second. If we scroll a little bit further down, we can basically, if you want to just do a simple integration, we can skip over most parts here. There is a lot you can do with it if you want to have some very specific use cases. The most important part for us here is this definition of periodic action. And the periodic action will be called in an interval, say 10 seconds by default. You can change that on the bottom of the file. And in here we can already see we have an information model.battery.something. We have information model.location.something. And down here is our CPU temperature, which we want to implement as of now, right? So we said we want to read the CPU temperature. As you can see, at the moment, this is still on my local machine. I have my Raspberry Pi open on my right-hand side, so unfortunately, I cannot share the screen with you. But what I did there is basically documented in, as I said, the tutorials for all the different steps we will take. And this is on GitHub under Eclipse Vorto, documents, and then tutorials. And here I will just open this MQTT Python one. Just scroll down a little bit, and we will see a example implementation of this reading out of the inbuilt CPU temperature. We can see this def get CPU temperature. We can copy that into our code and call the get temperature, CPU temperature method instead of passing a 0 here. Before we execute it, we have to fill in these device configurations. So before we can do that, we have to do one more thing, which is device provisioning. And that if I go back to our presentation slides, that is the next step, which is testing the integration, which means that we actually need a digital twin in Things now. So we will now go in, use this provision device generator, which will give us a postman. That's why we need the postman prerequisite, which will give us a postman script that conveniently allows us to create new things based on our information models. So same process again, we go to the Vorto repository, we click on the source code, this will give us a zip file. Let me show you. Vorto repository, same model, provision device, download the source code for it, save it to our downloads folder. There we go. Save, extract. And in here we can now see, sorry, wrong folder. Here's the script, which is the provision Raspberry Pi. Let me switch to Postman here. And now I can import this file I just downloaded and put in my downloads folder under tutorial, Raspberry Pi, scripts, provision device. Exactly. So now I have my provision request here. And all of these steps, again, are documented in the tutorial, so you can go and follow those step by step. The basic thing we have to do here is change the pre-request script tab, because we have 3 elements in here that have to be changed in order to create a new thing. And what we need here is the service instance ID, some password for our device, which we will use once we integrate it, and our device ID, so the device ID we want our device to have later on. In order to get the service instance ID, I will go to the Bosch IoT Suite account, and in here you can see I already subscribed to the asset communication package. Here I can go on show credentials. This will open a tab with all the information we need. Here we can see the service instance ID. So this is the one I have to copy. I will just take this one, just paste it into Postman. Of course, make sure that it's fine. I will do Vorto tutorial here as a password, and my device ID consists of a namespace and then a colon and some ID for the device. And we can get our namespace or even set our namespace if we haven't done that already by clicking on the Go to Dashboard button of our asset communication, waiting for IoT Suite to sign us in. And once we are on our dashboard, we have this namespace tab here. So we click on that, and here I already set a namespace. If there is no namespace set, you can set one for your own account. Going back to Postman, I will do the namespace, again as I said, colon, and then some ID. I will do Raspi, and then 4321. And we're already done in this tab. The other step we have to take is we have to have some kind of authentication, otherwise we won't be able to create things inside of the IoT Suite. So we have this headers tab, and in here we have to add some bearer token. In order to have that, or to get that, we have to go back to our suite again, and which is really convenient. Up here in this, on this user icon, we can open another submenu, and in here we have OAuth 2 clients. We open that, we will see a new page that will show us our already set up clients. I already have set up one, or more likely 2, the one is already deleted. And we can use these information, these authentication information now. One thing you have to make sure to realize and do when you do this on your own is that if you create a new OAuth 2 client, you have to make sure that both of these checkboxes are checked, because provisioning devices accesses the hub endpoint, and if you want to also have the dashboard in place later on, this is getting data from things directly. So you have to make sure that both of them are checked in order to have the full pipeline working for you later on. I will cancel this and use my already predefined one. By clicking on use, this will generate a token that is valid for 5 minutes. I will just copy that to the clipboard, going to Postman again, and instead of this add bearer token, I will just paste this in here, send the request. This will take a few seconds, and yeah, and here we can already see, okay, so it already worked. The body of this request, so what this device provisioning is actually doing, it is sending some predefined, some generated model or some JSON representation of our Vorto model, our Vorto information model. If you look at it a little bit closer, here we can see our thing name is Raspberry Pi tutorial, our namespace is set, we have a password set, and if we scroll down a little bit further, we can see the features here, and here you can see features. One was battery, we still remember that, location, and temperature. And our temperature is even called CPU temperature, as we did in the Vorto model. So what we send to this endpoint, what we do when using this device provisioning, we just send some predefined Vorto model to the endpoint, add some password, and if we look at the response now, this creates some credentials and takes the device ID we provided, creates an auth ID for it, and enables secrets. And if we scroll down a little bit further, it even creates these adapters for all kinds of data pushing. In this case, we will use MQTT as said before, so we can see that the device is created. If we now go back, or let's copy this tenant ID because I know that one of the elements in this device configuration is the tenant ID, so I will enter the tenant ID into this field. Device password was Vorto tutorial. I still remember that. Device ID, let's go back and copy that. Let's see, oh, sorry. Copy the device ID. And the only configuration you have to do in here to basically make it work or make it connect is really just taking what you get in the Postman response and put it here. Auth ID is the same as the device ID, just with a underscore instead of a colon. The ditto topic can be something, some namespace slash some ID. In this case, we will just use the same and just use our device name as the topic. And one thing we now see here is this add path to server certificate. And this one is used again to make sure that we have a secure transmission. So we don't have a certificate for now, but we can simply download that. And again, in this case, it's again useful to have the tutorials open because we already linked that for you. You can find it in several places, but I find it most convenient to just right click and save the one linked in the tutorial. Just make sure to, out of convenience, just make sure to put it in the same folder. This will allow you to reference it with a relative path in the file. So just like // and then IoT hub.cert. And that's basically the whole integration for now. So we have our authentication, our configuration finished for the connection, and we did our integration by pasting this get CPU temperature and adding it to the current measurement. If you now give me a second, I will activate or start the script on the Raspberry Pi here. So I have, as I said, I have the same configuration on the Raspberry Pi, the same thing I showed you a second ago. So we'll just start this here. There we go. Now it's sending data. First, before we use the dashboard, we will go into the developer documentation of the IoT Things, just to show you that it's not some third-party database or whatever, but it's really the Things service. Again, we will go down to Things here, get call. Of course, I have to authorize myself here again, so I will reload the page because the token already is expired probably after 5 minutes. Copy the new token here, authorize myself in the Swagger UI. authorize. There we go. And then I can try it out and insert my ID I just set up. We go back to the device ID. This was this one, com.bosch.vorto tutorial, Raspberry Pi. I will go back to the Swagger UI, paste it here, and if we now execute this call, we will see that here we have the same representation as we actually sent to our system. In this case, it already has some location definition, some location information, same with the temperature, the min-max and current temperature. And if we scroll down a little bit further, it's a little bit small. There's this battery information as well. So we actually have some information in things, and we can use that information now as a starting point to read it out again by using our node.js dashboard, our water dashboard we created. So let me jump back to the presentation, open it up. So the testing step is done, and now we want to visualize this information in our dashboard with our, as I said, cards that are compliant to the Vorto function blocks, so we can reuse them for different models. So we will create this simple dashboard. The steps are the same. We will go to Vorto repository, go to the IoT Suite Generator or the plugin, and then download it, install the dependencies for our tool, and run it again. So let me go to the Vorto repository. Again, same information model, the Raspberry Pi. And here we can see this visualized device data, which requires Node.js. If we download that, same steps, download it, put it in the folder. Let me see, downloads, there we go, web UI zip, put it in tutorial. I will just unzip that as well. There we go. And in here we can see some information. The most important one is this config.json, because in here, like if we open that, we can again see client ID, client secret, and the scope. And if you remember what we saw on the credentials page, we have a client secret, a client ID, and a scope defined for this specific OAuth client we use to create the thing and to send data to the service. So let me just fill in the blanks here and copy the ID, copy the secret. And after this step, we are basically done with the whole process. So it uses the OAuth client to authenticate with Bosch IoT Suite and just grabs all the devices, all the things you created that are available for your specific like client credentials that are set up to be visible by using the specific policy for the suite auth setup. So we entered it now. I will save it. Last step we have to do, since it's JavaScript, right? We have some dependencies we need to install. And if I go back into the other folder here, into our web UI, I can just do a npm install to install the dependencies that are listed in the README, in the package.json, sorry. And it just takes a few seconds. And once that is done, we can then start up the dashboard, which will give us our application that we can then use to see the devices we already set up in our system. That's just what we want to set more in a second. There we go, added packages, npm start, which will run the application. Takes a few more seconds until it executes the command, starts up the app. App is running on port 8080, so we can open a new window. I will go to localhost 8080, and
we also have the source code of this app in our Eclipse repository, or GitHub repository.
Exactly. And now we can see that there is no thing yet because we just started up. If we wait a few seconds, there we go. We can see that it successfully pulled one thing, and the thing is already visible in here. If we now click on this device, we can see the information that is available through things, which is thing ID, policy ID, and so on, and the current CPU temperature. And just to show you that it's working, we will put a finger on the CPU sensor, which will get down the temperature to a little bit less, and then you can see the data updating here. Here we go. You can already see it's now at 60 degrees only. What we also have in this dashboard is this location feature. So for every device that has some location set up, so some function block like location, geolocation used, we can see the location of that specific device. And if we switch over to this other tab, locate, you can see it on the left-hand side. We can see the device, the location of every device. So if we have several devices in here, we can also see different devices and all of their locations. If we click on the device, on the location itself, we can then see more information about the device, and clicking on the name will take us back to the specific device page as we've seen before. This concludes the step 4, and we have one last step that will be really quick because it's already set up. So if we jump one further, step 5 will be just adding other things with the same capabilities. So you can see, by doing that, you can see that by using this Vorto or this Vorto function blocks that are set up by the team and used in this app, you can just create different things that might be completely different in the way they are integrated, but still use the same Vorto abstracted payloads. We can see that the things are actually the same. And if we go back now, I already prepared this Tracy tag provision request here. I will just have to adjust the token here with a new one, so I will update that. Let me see. Get a new token again, reload the page because 5 minutes are over. And if I copy the new token,
the Tracy tag is also available in the Eclipse repository as an information model, so you can try out any other device that you can create with a location, having a location function block or battery function block or temperature function block that's in order to be rendered the same way.
You can see that the request was successful. We have a response now, and if we just wait a few seconds and go back to our Vorto dashboard, just check the devices, we can already see that it was created. So we have a new device in here. We have a connectivity status, a connectivity function block used in this device, so we can see it's connected at the moment. And if we go back to our location, and I will just take a second to activate the integration of this specific device so we can see once it's authenticated, we can see that there is data coming in. And if we just wait a second, there we go. We can see that the second marker popped up with the location of that specific device. If we click on it again, we can see the Tracy tag. And if you would click on this one, we would again get back to the device dashboard, which will show us all the different cards for that.
Just if you want to try it out yourself, we have everything here in links for you to try out later. We send around these slides so you can do that offline on your own time. Thank you very much for everyone joining in. We will be providing all this stuff what we showed today, sending email around, and also the YouTube or the video about this for people to watch, or people cannot make it. And yeah, looking forward to the next IoT session, demo session.